Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So I'm making this video to go ahead and explain the basics of Beyondatc and how to use it now that it's coming up on about a week being out. So you can think of it a little bit of tutorial, a little bit just an understanding of what it is so that you can determine if you want to go ahead and purchase this or not. So the main website, beyondatc.net, is where you would go to get this. And so there's a few versions available, and again, this is in early access. So what that means is potentially it may not be as polished as you may expect. There's definitely been a debate going on the Discord channel with all of us about, hey, is this a bug, is this not? There were some challenges the first day or two it came out with connecting, at least for me. Certainly everybody's experience is a little bit difficult. The developers have been releasing an update pretty frequently. I think it started as 1.0.4. Last I saw, we were up to 0.22. So that's, in less than a week. So you can see kind of the pace that they're making changes at this point. There is not any information, there's no changelog they're releasing about what's going on or so forth. So just be aware of what you're potentially getting into. But I would say if you're looking for a ATC product that takes things above and beyond what the basic ATC can do in the game, certainly from even just the standpoint of the audio quality and how the voices sound and so forth, so it's less the robotic voices, the basic Beyondatc is going to step up your game. I've really enjoyed it, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this, because I know there's been new people showing up and kind of like, hey, what do I do? How do I start? So I just want to give you my perspective on how to do that. So the basic system, $29.99, and if you don't want to do anything else, as it says, it gives you lifetime access to the product and all future updates. What that's going to do, though, is give you basic voices. It gives you some premium characters, so there's premium voices, which are higher quality, and those consume some costs and so forth. So you're going to need to be aware of that, but I would encourage you, try it with the basic voices. There's really nothing that stops you from doing that, and then you just buy top-off packs of either $9.99 for 250,000 characters or $30 for 750,000 characters. So it's basically about the same price regardless of what you do. So when you're ready to go forward, if you'd like to go ahead and buy it, you're not buying it off that pricing page. You're not even really paying for it off the website. So you go to the download link to download it here, and then you'll download the program, and then basically you'll be able to go ahead and start it up, and it will ask you to purchase it inside the program. So they were offering the base program for $30. They were offering a supporters pack, which really just costs a little bit more, doesn't really give you access to anything more, but it's just showing support to the developers, and that's $59.99 instead of $29.99. I'm not seeing that listed on the site anymore, so maybe that was just the first few days. So some of the things we've learned since things have been running, at least I'm going to share what worked for me and what I would recommend you do. There are definitely things on the Discord channel which I'd encourage you to join. So if you are having issues, you can put questions out there. But there are things that could happen, such as waiting for connection, crashes to desktops, or some issues with your microphone working or other pieces. I won't be able to cover everything here, but I'll give you tips that I've seen that have worked for folks. So one of the first things that you're going to want to look at is when you get this downloaded and you go to install it, I encourage you to run as administrator. So if you're not familiar with what that is, you'll need to unzip it, and then you'll have this installer here. You right click on that if you're in a Windows environment, and you run as administrator. If you've never done that with a program before, what that is doing is just giving the program a little bit higher access to change things on your system that might inhibit it working correctly. So to avoid some problems, you'll likely want to go ahead and do that. If you're security conscious and so forth, and you have an antivirus program and a firewall running, you can rest assured, those things still continue to monitor. So if you're just worried that something inappropriate might be happening to your machine, I'd encourage you leave that on. I know there's sometimes concerns that people have had. I've not seen any proof that an antivirus program or a firewall is inhibiting this. I run Avast, which is one of the more popular ones. When I had some issues, I had turned it off. It did nothing differently. I've had it on the whole time with many successful flights. I've probably got 5 or 6 flights now that I have done, and the antivirus and the firewall have been on the whole time. So, again, each of these programs are potentially different, so it's certainly something to try, but I am of the opinion that I do not think that is a large part of the issues that will happen if you're having anything occurring. But obviously, try what you need to get things working. So I won't be able to demonstrate an install because I've already installed it, but basically you'll install, it will ask you to purchase the program internally. You'll then go ahead and get it set up. And every time you run the program, including that first time, so you're running the installer as administrator, also run Beyondatc as administrator. I also take that to the point of the updates occur when you go into the program. So you'll fire it up, and if there's an update, it will download it. Then it will proceed to install it, and at the end, like a lot of installers, it has the checkbox of, go ahead and run it. I uncheck that, hit finish, and then restart Beyondatc as administrator, just to make certain I know that it's running as administrator. That will save you a lot of headaches, and usually is the issue with failing to connect. And then it's going to fire up, and now it did that check, and I have the latest version. So I'm already at the point where I can use it, so I've got my Simbrief Pilot ID in here. So this is a point of confusion in some cases too. The Simbrief Pilot ID is a numerical ID. It is not a text ID. So there's also a username in Simbrief. That is not what it is asking for. It is your Simbrief Pilot ID. If you go into Simbrief and settings, you'll be able to find that, and just look for your Simbrief Pilot ID and place that in here. We're going to look at options before we go in any further. And so here are the options as of 0.22 EA version. And so the general mode is, if you hover over these, you can see they do have some help. So the reason you can't see my Simbrief ID, which is wonderful for someone like me who does videos, is, it'll hide that with this and just puts those asterisks in. If you're having performance issues, you can change this. If you want radio degradation, you can go ahead and include that. If you want just really crystal clear voices without any of the background. But basically the radio degradation simulates the fact that if you're far away from the air traffic control location you're speaking with, it may be more difficult to hear clearly. You can use complex voice accents. So basically, because there have been some problems in early access, you're able to turn this on and off. Some of the foreign languages are challenging to understand, and some have even said they're unintelligible. I've heard a few. They certainly can be. Again, the developers heard that. They responded. They gave you the ability in the basic model to turn that off if you're having difficulty. And this switched since last version, because I think it used to be kind of it was automatically opted in, where basically the switch was turn off accents or something, and now they change this the other way. So I would normally have this on until I have a problem. I've not heard anything. I've flown through from South America through Mexico, so I've heard some air traffic controllers with the Spanish accents. They've all been intelligible, but perhaps that was because this was off, but I was not using .22 for a flight I did that on. I was using 2.1, and I believe it was set the other way. Prefer VA call signs is important if you're flying for a virtual airline. Otherwise, what it's going to do is it's going to look at the ICAO code or the ICAO code and say the first three letters, that's the name of your airline. So if you use something like AAL, UAL, if you're flying for those virtual airlines, you'll have no problem. But for example, if you've seen on the channel, I fly for things like Walker Air Transport. Well, for Walker to work, and that call sign to work, this needs to be on. If you just fly as a Southwest pilot or a Delta pilot, a Ryanair pilot, British Airways pilot, you don't need that on. You can just go ahead and turn that off and not worry about that. Next key thing is your key bindings. You can key bind push to talk, bring to front, and I don't know what fire action 1 is. I think it's just the first item in the list. It would allow you to do that. You can see the only thing I have bound is the tab key as my push to talk. I leave my control key for other things in case I'm going to use that with other programs and other add-ons that I may do. While we're down here, AI traffic, you can see it's got the big inoperable sticker on it, kind of like you'll see in some airplane models and so forth where certain switch banks or something don't operate. This will be something that we're getting in the future, but this was the key piece in early access that was discussed and decided by the community that no, we'd rather you release it before you have traffic worked out. AI traffic at the time of this recording is planned to be just a included feature of you buying Beyondatc. It's not going to be DLC. It's not going to cost you anything extra. So you will get traffic as part of your $39 or $29.99 purchase unless they make a new announcement after this. So audio, set your volume. I've played with this. You can see I have it at 50. It gets pretty loud at 100. UI sounds are just user interface sounds in the background of your flight simulator. If you try to turn this off, it warns you about that. Then you've got which input device you're using for your microphone. And then if you use auto response, you can pick between US and UK male and female. And then you've got some, let's say, celebrity voices that you can use. Now keep in mind that if you're using these, you're going to be using your premium characters when you're doing auto respond. So beware of that. You can do a voice sample to just verify you like what you have. Upon first load, the system will try to do a microphone and speech recognition test. If that doesn't work, you can skip that if you're having problems, and you can always then do it here. And then over here with the audio, it's going to come in defaulted premium for the controller voice model, and traffic is basic. Now again, we don't have traffic. It really won't use this at this point, but you'll want to go ahead and decide if you want to use premium characters for the voice model. Again, I highly encourage you, start with the basic. See if you like it, because again, if you are good with the basic, you don't have to purchase any more premium characters. You do get 50,000 characters as part of the purchase to use if you'd like to. At some point I will certainly use those, but as you can see, I haven't touched a single character of those yet. But it is important to go in here before you do your first flight. If you don't want to suddenly consume those and not know what's happening, turn that off from premium to basic. But those are the options, very simple. You can get to the options while you're flying, so it's not a problem. Okay, I'm not going to cover things in the account. Obviously, that's the setup for your account, your ability to unlock versions, but all that will happen upon your original load. So nice thing is they've shared the roadmap they have for the product. So we're obviously here in ATC Core, and then you can scroll over and see kind of what they're heading through. I do like the fact there's user selections, user selection 2, user selection 1. So basically they're going to get through a couple versions of traffic injection, then they're going to go core air traffic control 1.5. Then there's going to be some sort of a user selection. Then we're going to look at VFR. They're going to improve traffic further. Another user selection, incorporate emergency procedures, and then they really haven't thought beyond that. As you click through any of these, you know, you're going to be able to get detail of what they mean. So if you're looking at the roadmap, it's available on their website, but this also lets you see it in game. And again, if you're buying things, so here you go, the supporter pack is here, you know, where you can talk about what's going on. So yes, it does look, I apologize, I was a little wrong in the beginning. You do get development branch where they're working on latest features. So basically you'll continue to get early access to things before the rest of the community. Then a couple fun little things like a VIP chat lounge and a donut mini game. And then these are your character packs, so 250,000 characters or 750,000 characters if you'd rather just not buy 3 versions of this. Alright, so that goes over the basic setup and looking at how you'd want to set things up in the system. Now before you jump in, what do you need to do to be able to fly, to be able to use the product? Well, obviously you need a flight simulator. I assume if you don't have that, you probably wouldn't have even been interested in this product. But I want to be thorough in this video, so you need a flight simulator, specifically Microsoft Flight Simulator. The version of Microsoft Flight Simulator does not matter, so whatever version you have is fine. And then you are going to need to have your flight plan done in Simbrief. I am not going to walk you through how to do that here. I don't have specific Simbrief videos on the channel yet. They'll be coming at some point. But if you need to understand what to do with Simbrief or so forth, this is not going to cover that. So you'll go ahead and you'll set up your flight plan. And so we'll take a look at one that I flew here recently. So this is the one that went from Brazil up to Las Vegas. So it was about a 12-hour flight in total, so pretty significant. And so again, obviously you need a departure and arrival. I encourage you to set your initial altitude. You're also going to have your call sign. So again, this is your ATC call sign, and this is a key field that Beyondatc uses. So once again, if you're using a virtual airline like I am, even though my flight number wasn't WAT, the flight number is not as important as the call sign. So just make sure your call sign is what you want to use, and again, it's going to use those first 3 characters here as your airline. So if you put in 4 characters or you put in 2 and then have something else, so there's been folks that are like, well, I've made up this call sign, it's PX, and then they did the rest as like N256 whatever. Well, it's looking up PXN and then giving you something. So for example, when I used the fly-by-wire Airbus at one point, it defaults in Simbrief to use a call sign of FBW. Well, FBW was Dutch something or other is what Beyondatc was reading it as, because I didn't have things triggered for the call sign. And again, I don't know that fly-by-wire is supported in the system, but those are things you can ask on the Discord. If you have a specific virtual airline and you'd like it included, I've seen there are ways to make that request, and then they can add it into subsequent versions. Okay, so you're going to want to spawn into a airport. Again, I'm going to use this old flight plan for this video because that's what I have. Otherwise, I'd have to generate another one. And we're just going to show certain pieces of it, so we're not going to go very far. But you're going to want to spawn at the gate because obviously that's how you're going to start with air traffic and so forth. You're going to want to call in, ask for your clearance, and so forth. So I'm going to go to this gate here. Alright, so we're here at the airport, And we'll see how this works. It's possible it won't connect, but you'll hit fly here. And it's usually pretty quick. There you go. That actually worked. So you'll see it's going to load your departure airport, then your arrival airport. And then it's very quickly going to go through and get all the other information it needs. So the messages will pop up. If you loaded the main menu of the of the flight simulator, which you can do, it will get to 30% and then it will be stuck. So and then it'll say basically waiting to load in to the airport, and it's waiting for you. All right, so we can see here, this is your interface for Beyondatc. It's going to tell you you're connected to the sim. You can trigger whether it's always on top or not. You know, as I'm sharing things in videos, I'm leaving it as always on top for people to see it, but you can decide. You can put it on a side screen. You can do whatever you want. You're going to have the option to auto respond. These are simply checkboxes. You turn them on and off. Auto respond means it's going to auto respond. So if you remember in the options where I set that US mail voice for my auto respond voice, or you could set the celebrity voices, that is how it does that. Auto tune radio. Basically, you're then not having to tune your nav radio in your plane. If you want to do that, turn that off. And then go ahead and tune things manually. And then this is where you see your call sign. So Walker 4021. Again, when I had FBW, it was, I think, Dutch Airman something or other. So just be aware that's what it'll use. This takes you right back to the options, and you can make changes as you're flying. Your headset is how you will see what the frequencies are, and you can click on any of these to use them. So if, for example, we want to listen to the ATIS at the airport, we'll click on that here, and you'll see it will tune to that.
Departing runway 10 left. Transition level 080. Advise on initial contact you have information for stop. Guarulhos. Airport information for stop.
And you can hear the accent's a little rough. I do have that setting on if we look at it. So I'm going to change to clearance. And so now you can see we're on clearance. I'm doing that so I can speak and you can hear me. I could also go ahead and tune it directly into my nav radio in the plane. I have always on top, so it's not going away. But if I go up here, turn my battery on, then turn my power on, you know, I'll then have my information, and I'll be able to work with things here. Then again, we're at 121, so I can go ahead, for example, and put 1215, and then move that up into my active. And now you can see the frequency does not exist. I don't have that. But if I go back and change, so if I just flip this back, you can see I'm now at Guarulhos delivery. I may be butchering that airport's name, but it is what it is. So you've got multiple ways to do it. Again, this is something that comes up semi-frequently. People are upset, confused. There are multiple ways to do it. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of complaining online about things not working, but it seems to work pretty well. And again, you know, you can see for traffic control, TRACON, there's a lot of frequencies. As you fly, you'll be handed off to different controllers in the same TRACON. I don't know how realistic that is per real ATC, or if a controller would have you through the whole airspace, but I think for something to be happening, I think that's what the game will do, or what Beyondatc will do, what the mod will do. Obviously, at this point, we're not functioning yet, but it's just as simple as in my case, I'm going to hit my push to talk button, and I'm going to go ahead and issue a command. And again, I'm not going to cover phraseology. I'm not going to cover things like that. If you're new to this and you're not sure what to say, my best suggestion for you, turn auto respond on, use the buttons to send the messages you want to send if things aren't working. You know, at some point you're going to have to do things manually in that case, because like you have to request your IFR clearance. It's not just automatically going to happen. But like once you do that, then you can see what the system responds back, and you can kind of learn what's acceptable phraseology. Also, if you have a problem and you're issuing a command, Beyondatc will come back and say, I did not understand, or some format of that. Your request is not understood. If you continue to get that and you're banging your head against things, instead of being frustrated and giving up, saying I can't use this and shutting it down, turn on auto respond. Go ahead and then make the choice to give the response, whether it's acknowledging the call or whatever it is, and then you can see what it is. Because while this isn't fully scripted like some of the older air traffic control mods were, there is still a need to be somewhat correct. And Beyondatc is developed enough that if you make something ridiculous happen, the air traffic controllers can get upset with you. Like, I actually mistakenly hit the button at one point while I was sitting here at the gate and said request departure, and the controller said, you know, Walker 4021, you're nowhere near the runway. Why are you requesting a departure clearance? They should have yelled at me. I made the wrong call. But we're going to go ahead and just demonstrate a little bit here. So let's go forward. Guarulhos delivery. Radio check, Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker 4021 Ave, readability 5.
Okay, so you can see an example there of the accent. And again, this is basic voices. Very difficult to understand her. She almost sounds French, but readability was almost like helability, 5. It was pretty significantly challenging. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off the complex voice accents, and then we're going to call for a clearance. Guarulhos delivery, requesting clearance to Las Vegas, Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker 4021 heavy, Guarulhos delivery, expect runway 10 left, doors 2 alpha departure, Ejeba transition. Squawk 1256.
So you can hear, even without the complex accents, I still can tell that there's a Hispanic accent there, what I would deem that, and so forth. And again, you may think that that's not right, whatever. I mean, we can debate the quality.
Walker 4021 heavy, Guarulhos delivery, expect runway 10 left, doors 2 alpha departure, Ejeba transition. Squawk 1256.
All right. So I didn't acknowledge. I'm going to take the opportunity here to change the complex accents, and let's hear when it calls us again. It may be quite irritated because it's the third time, but let's see what it sounds like.
Walker 4021 Ave, Guarulhos delivery.
Now, I was able to understand her a little bit. Ready for departure, Walker 4021 heavy. I'm doing that on purpose.
Negative, Swall 1256.
Okay, so you could hear, squawk was not discernible. Negative, the other things were. Say again.
Negative, Swall 1256.
Expect runway 10 left, Zors 2 alpha departure, I gave a transition, squawk 1256, Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker 4021 heavy, read that correct. Contact ground 126.9er when ready for push or start.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change this again. Contact ground 126.9er when ready for push and start, Walker 4021 heavy. Now the auto tune changes me. You can see we're on ground. So now we're going to request push and start. Ground, request push and start. Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker Full 021 Ave, Guarulhos Ground, puxar cap Provet, face south.
Okay, so in that case, I was able to understand that. Yes, it was a heavy accent, but I believe, you know, every word was done relatively well. But again, this gives you that idea of, you know, you have some control there if you can't say things.
Walker Full 021 Ave, Guarulhos Ground, puxar CleanGNG start up Provet, face south.
And again, the engine start, a little more difficult. Push back, engine start approved, face south, Walker 4021 heavy. And again, if you're reading back correctly, you're okay. All right, so we're starting the push and start. We need to face south, which is going to be that way. And again, I'm obviously just showing you the pieces we need here. If you want to see a full flight, you want to see other things, you know, you can watch one of my other videos, you know, or at least more of the flight, but I need to get airborne and at least show you a little bit more of how the interaction will work. All right, so I had to step away for a little bit, even though I had things paused. I went ahead and continued on the back end, it looks like, with the time in the sim, which is probably okay.
All aircraft be advised information Julia now current, KNH 1018.
Alright, so at this point I need to let them know that we have our engines running. Alright, so we're ready for taxi information. Ground taxi to runway, Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker 4021 heavy, runway 10 left taxi via Kilo, Bravo, Golf.
Runway 10 left, taxi via Kilo, Bravo, Golf, Walker 4021 heavy. Alright, and again, you're always going to have down here what you can issue commands for, what it will listen for. So there are things you may want to do, such as change runway or other things. You can't do that. That's not supported in here right now. So we'll see how this works. I'm not sure that it's going to work, that I'm going to be able to see what's going on. But I just want to let you see the example of how things work as we go. So again, we're trying to go Kilo, Bravo, Golf. This airport happened to work. So Kilo is what we're on, that we're exiting here. And I understand that because we've got Beyondatc up, we're not seeing a lot. But basically, I want to get to the farther taxiway, that is Bravo. The first one we're crossing is Alpha, but it does sense where you are, but it is able to tell kind of where you're at. But I think we'll be okay, because all I'm really going to do to get you through a little bit is we're going to take off, climb a little bit, and just get a few instructions from ATC, just so you kind of understand how it works. I just want to show that it does, you know, automatically know to some degree where you're at. So we're getting close here to the end of Bravo. So here you go. You can see it's generating.
021 heavy. Contact Corollos Tower 135.2. Bye-bye.
Contact Tower 1352. Walker 4021 heavy. Again, you just need kind of the key pieces. And again, if you don't know what to do, you can always go ahead and let the auto respond, take care of it, and then just hit request departure or whatever it is. Request departure, Walker 4021 heavy.
Walker 40 4021 Heavy, Corolhos Tower, wind 150 at 6, runway 10 left, line up and cleared for takeoff.
So I hit the button too early, which was what that loud beep was. Line up and cleared for takeoff, runway 10 left, Walker 4021 Heavy. So again, we're just back to radio check and wind check as the only things that it would basically be allowing you to do here. So some of the challenges as we get ready to line up on the runway. It doesn't seem to listen very well or give you a lot of options for changing your altitude. Even if you select things that are on the list, sometimes it will go ahead and say that it's not possible. There's a couple of things like that that still have to be solved. So I assume those will get better over time, given that this is early access. But overall, it gives an enjoyable experience. So just keep that in mind. I encourage you to try it out. But just be aware. The nice thing is because it's not enforcing anything. It's not like some of the career mods that are actually monitoring if you're following proper procedures or instructions. Other than it will obviously get upset with you if you're not doing something it thinks you should be doing. There's really nothing that says you can't just fly the way you think you need to fly and worry about it later. So if you've got a flight level, and sometimes it'll send you to runways you didn't put in Simbrief. Sometimes it will do altitudes you didn't do. So on this flight, my flight plan is flight level 320, but it sent me initially to oh, you know what, we never put the flaps out. This could get really difficult to take off here. I don't know if we'll get the flaps up in time. We're gonna find out. Looks like we're okay. Alright. So, it's hard flying with only half the screen.
Walker 4021 Heavy, contact Sao Paulo Control Departure 135.75.
Contact departure 13575, Walker 4021 Heavy. Departure, Walker 4021 Heavy, climbing through 4000.
Walker 4021 Heavy, Sao Paulo Control Departure, identified, climb to flight level 190.
Okay, so I didn't issue that command really well, but you can see it dealt with it, so it doesn't require scripting per se. Climb to flight level 190, Walker 4021. So we're going to go ahead, and so you can see, like, you can request the next heading fix. You can do altitude changes, request direct to fix. So you can do some things, but some of these in-flight commands have some quirks to them. So just be aware it doesn't always work as smoothly. So while the map's not on here, it does appear to be following my plan. I've got my Navigraph out there. It is climbing now. I think we're good. So now I can put my flaps back. So it was a bit of a mess on the takeoff, but hey, it worked. I've done this enough. But this should, at this point, give you enough. I'm not sure if we've got a point. Okay, yeah, we need to stay below 9,000. So that's why it dipped a little bit, and then we got to be below 16 for the next one. We're not going to get that far because, really the intent is to kind of let you see how it works, let you see what it does. Obviously, as we get closer to 19,000 feet, it might call us in. We might also leave airspace. But basically what it will do in flight now, especially once we're done climbing, and it's given us that information. Sometimes it'll give you directions, it'll, you know, give you vectors. Like it didn't tell me on the runway. You'll notice here it didn't tell me, you know, stay on runway heading. You'll get all that. That is where things are still in flux. They're asking people to submit routes or flight plans or information about airports where they feel that the procedures are wrong. I have seen things where, especially around mountainous areas or something, it seems that it will like encourage, you know, it will give you instructions to go to an altitude that would in essence have you run into terrain and things like that, which obviously would be a bad thing. So they've done their best, I'm sure, to make sure that doesn't happen, but with all the tens of thousands of airports, or certainly thousands of airports around the world that people would fly to, obviously that doesn't always work. But if you're willing to accept some of that, and I think it's fine, because once again, if you don't follow it and it's sensing you're not following it, like it will call you, but it's not like it's suddenly gonna abort your sim or something. Like you can just fly and do what you need to do and use it as you need to. But once you're now in flight, after we stop climbing, all you're basically going to be getting is Walker 4021 Heavy, contact whatever on this frequency, you acknowledge that, you then contact them, tell them what your flight level is, they say Roger, and then you wait until you hit the next point where they're handing you off. And again, I think I mentioned they'll pass between controllers sometimes, and I think that might just be more for having activity with Beyondatc. I don't know how realistic that is when you're going through. I mean, it'd be one thing if there was a shift change or something and that controller was leaving, but you know, again, all they're doing is asking you contact this. It's just, you know, you're in the same center because they're telling you that. But as we talked about here, you've got all these frequencies in Tracon. You know, even in Tower or whatever, we had several. And right now, you know, we are still at Tower. Again, we've got to be below, you know, that's the thing. We still have 7 miles, so to kind of go through. But I think you get the understanding of what you need to do. As far as where it takes you all the way to the end, obviously it'll bring you through descent. It will give you instructions.
Walker 4021 Heavy, contact Brasilia radar 126.15.
So there we go. We're getting handed off from the tower now. Contact Brasilia radar 126.15, Walker 4021 Heavy. Brasilia radar, Walker 4021 Heavy. Climbing through 15,000 on the way to flight level 190.
Walker 4021 Heavy, Brasilia radar, climb to flight level 380.
Alright, so again, now it's setting us to 380 and we're good. Climb to flight level 380, Walker 4021 Heavy. And so now you can see, now we're kind of in, we've transitioned into cruise, in essence. It's given us our final instruction as far as it's concerned. To get to the flight level, we now have call ready for descent. So if you want to do that, you can. But again, like if you hit request altitude change.
Walker 4021 Heavy, request new cruise altitude.
Walker 4021 Heavy, Roger, say new altitude.
So we'll see if I can get, see, it won't let me go to flight level 320. Flight level 320, Walker 4021 Heavy. That's where I really want to be.
Walker 4021 Heavy, confirm new cruise altitude, flight level 320.
Affirmative, Walker 4021 Heavy.
Walker 4021 Heavy, Roger, new cruise altitude, flight level 320.
Alright, well there you go. So this time it worked, but I have had times when it doesn't. Now, I will, once I set this, I don't know why I'm doing it, because I'm not going to finish this flight, but hey, One of the things that wasn't happening, and it appears it's still an issue, you'll notice this icon is not changed. So you'll just have to be aware that it did approve you to 320.
Walker 4021 Heavy. Contact Curitiba Radar 126.1.
Curitiba Radar 126.1, Walker 4021 Heavy. Curitiba Radar 126.1, Walker 4021 Heavy. Passing through 23,000 on the way to flight level 320. As long as you don't stop the button.
021 Heavy. Curitiba Radar, roger.
Okay, and there you go. So you're basically going to have that as what you're doing now. You're just literally going to be getting that. Contact them, you're going to contact them, you're going to give them your flight level. So basically, once I'm at cruise, I would just be, Curitiba Radar, Walker 4021 Heavy, flight level 320. And then it would just come back and then tell me exactly what they did. So that becomes what happens through most of the flight. Not being a pilot, I can't verify, but I would assume that would logically seem like what they'd need unless they were moving you around traffic and so forth. And so maybe once traffic is introduced, that may change things, because we may have planes that they're suddenly going to be like, hey, head to heading whatever for 5 minutes, and then they're going to bring us back on track or something. But overall, if you're looking for how to do this, you have what you need. It's actually, honestly, I would say very simple. It's very easy to use, and it definitely makes things more enjoyable. Certainly, as you've noticed, with the accents on the basic voices, it can be challenging. But now that they've added that switch in, absolutely easy to use. And secondarily, you could always use the text here, but I understand some people may want to fly with a small window. It may be in the background and they just want to basically hear it, because you're not having this in real air traffic. So, they may be wanting to just talk to air traffic, and if you can't understand them, that makes it very, very difficult. But if you've enjoyed this and have not dropped a like yet, please consider doing that. It'll help with reach of the channel. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider that. And I will see you next time.